There are rules to the world. They are hidden, but they are there. They govern the rise and fall of markets. They govern the life cycles of empires. They govern the patterns of your own life. Most of us never see these rules. We are tossed around by events we cannot predict, reacting to booms and busts with surprise and fear. We treat reality like a series of random accidents. But what if it isn't? What if reality, in all its complexity, works like a machine with clear cause and effect relationships? If you could understand that machine, you could understand the future. You could see the gears turning before the outcome becomes obvious to everyone else. This is the central, world-altering idea of Ray Dalio. He is one of the most successful investors in modern history. But calling him an investor is like calling Isaac Newton a man who saw an apple fall. Dalio built Bridgewater Associates from nothing into the world's largest hedge fund, a position it held for decades. He didn't do it with gut feelings or hot tips. He did it by treating the global economy as a complex but understandable system. He mapped its machinery. He wrote down its rules. He then built a company that operated on those rules, turning principles into algorithms that made decisions without ego or emotion. Dalio's journey wasn't just about markets. It was about understanding the mechanics of reality itself. He discovered that everything, a national economy, a business, a team, a human brain, operates according to timeless and universal laws. Success, he argues, is not about being brilliant or being lucky. It is about aligning yourself with how the world actually works. It's about stripping away your ego, facing uncomfortable truths, and building systems to make better decisions. He believes that the most common reason for failure is not a lack of intelligence, but an emotional attachment to being right, even when reality proves you wrong. This isn't a story about stock tips, get-rich-quick schemes. This is a playbook for a different way of thinking. It's a guide to seeing the world not as a confusing mess, but as a system you can navigate. We will break down Dalio's most powerful concepts, his controversial culture of radical truth, his framework for understanding the great debt cycles that shape history. We are going to decode the principles that allowed him to anticipate financial crises, build a legendary company, and design a life of continuous improvement. The goal is simple: to give you the tools to see the machine for yourself. So, what does it mean to see the world as a machine? For Ray Dalio, it starts with a brutal commitment to objectivity. Most people filter reality through their own biases, hopes, fears. They want the market to go up, so they ignore signs of a downturn. They want to believe they are a good leader, so they dismiss critical feedback. Dalio argues this is the fundamental human error. The first step is to observe what is actually happening, not what you wish were happening. This requires a level of honesty that is deeply uncomfortable for most. It means accepting that your opinions might be wrong. Reality is the ultimate judge. From this foundation, identify cause and effect relationships. Events are not random. A stock market crash has a cause. A successful project has a cause. A personal failure has a cause. Dalio studied these relationships across history to find repeating patterns. Hundreds of years of economic data, cycles of debt and credit, thousands of trades analyzed to find what wins and what loses. These repeating patterns are principles, steady truths across time. Once identified, a principle must be encoded. He doesn't just keep these rules in his head, he writes them down, he turns them into algorithms, he builds them into the operating system of his company. For example, diversification across uncorrelated assets reduces risk. He builds systems to enforce it automatically. That removes ego and emotion from decisions. The system doesn't care about feelings, it cares about the principle. The playbook applies beyond investing. People, teams, personal goals. Believability-weighted decision-making. Ideas judged by merit, not by rank. learning from mistakes. Pain plus reflection equals progress. We'll unpack these ideas one by one. You'll learn how Dalio thinks and how you can apply these principles to beat the cycles. Table of contents. 1. The 3-step operating system. 2. Reality is the ultimate judge. 3. From principles to algorithms. 4. Mistakes are just data. Ray Dalio's entire philosophy can be distilled into a simple, repeatable process. It is an operating system for interacting with reality. It has only 3 steps, but mastering them is a life's work. The first step, and the one where most people fail, is to observe reality with brutal objectivity. This means seeing the world as it is, not as you want it to be. It means setting aside your ego, your desires, your preconceived notions. You must become a camera, not a painter. A camera records what is there without judgment. A painter interprets, adds emotion, creates a subjective vision. Dalio insists that to succeed, you must start with the raw, unfiltered footage of reality. Once you have an objective view of your situation, the second step is to identify the cause and effect relationships at play. Nothing happens by accident. The market didn't just fall, it fell for a reason. Your project didn't just succeed, it succeeded because of specific actions and conditions. Dalio calls these recurring cause and effect patterns principles. He has spent his career hunting for them, studying history, economics, human psychology. He believes that if you can understand the underlying mechanics of a system, why A consistently leads to B, you gain a powerful predictive edge. You are no longer just reacting to events, you are anticipating them. The third and final step is to encode these principles, so they can be used to make better decisions in the future. This is the crucial leap from insight to action. It's not enough to understand a rule in your head. You must turn it into a concrete guideline, a checklist, an algorithm. By writing it down, you make it real and testable. You create a system that forces you to act on your knowledge, even when your emotions might tempt you to do otherwise. This formalization is what separates a vague idea from a reliable tool. It's the difference between saying, "I should diversify," and having a strict, written rule that defines exactly how your assets will be allocated. This 3-step loop, observe, identify, encode, is the engine of evolution for Dalio. It is a continuous cycle. You use your principles to make decisions. You observe the results. If a decision leads to a painful mistake, you don't just move on. You go back to the beginning of the process. You re-examine reality. You ask what you missed. You refine your principle, or create a new one. This relentless process of improvement is how you adapt and grow stronger over time. It's a framework for turning every experience, especially every failure, into a source of progress. It is how you build a machine for making better and better decisions. Dalio's worldview is built on a foundation of profound humility. It is a humility not before other people, but before reality itself. He argues that reality is the ultimate judge, jury, executioner. It does not care about your opinions, your credentials, or your feelings. It only cares about what works and what doesn't. You can have the most elegant theory in the world, but if it collides with reality and fails, the theory is wrong. Period. This seems obvious, but most people and organizations avoid it. They construct elaborate narratives to protect their egos from the harsh feedback of the real world. This is why Dalio pushes so hard for objectivity. The goal is to get your ego out of the way, so you can see the truth. He believes the biggest barrier to personal evolution is our need to be right. When we attach our identity to our ideas, criticism feels like a personal attack. That triggers a defensive, emotional reaction, shutting down our ability to learn. We fight to defend our position, instead of trying to find the best answer. This, Dalio says, is a recipe for disaster. The most successful people aren't always right. They're the fastest to admit they're wrong and adapt. To align with reality, actively seek disagreement. Find the smartest people who disagree with you and try to understand their reasoning. This isn't about politeness. It's about stress testing your thinking rigorously. If your view withstands intelligent scrutiny, your confidence grows. If it crumbles, you learned something valuable. You discovered a blind spot. The process is painful. It forces you to confront ignorance and biases head-on. The pain is temporary. Ignorance's cost is permanent. This commitment to reality separates learning organizations from dying ones. At Bridgewater, Dalio institutionalized it. He created tools to track disagreements, log mistakes, and force people to confront uncomfortable truths. Meetings were recorded and analyzed. Every employee was encouraged to challenge anyone, regardless of position in the hierarchy. The goal, a culture where the search for truth mattered more than personal comfort. A radical experiment to prove a simple point. Align with reality. Get better results. For Ray Dalio, a principle is useless if it stays in your head. An insight only becomes powerful when it is systematized. This means turning cause and effect into a repeatable process that guides decisions. It's the act of engineering your choices. At Bridgewater, this became computer algorithms. When Dalio's team found a working principle, e.g., a rule for when to buy an asset, they didn't just remember it. They translated it into code. The algorithm executed the trade automatically when conditions matched, removing human emotion. This push comes from one belief. Humans are unreliable decision makers. We are walking bundles of cognitive biases, emotional reactions, ego-driven impulses. On a good day, we might be rational. But when we are tired, stressed, or scared, our judgment becomes clouded. We make impulsive choices. We chase trends. We panic and sell at the bottom. An algorithm, on the other hand, feels nothing. It doesn't get greedy. It doesn't get scared. It simply executes given principles consistently, day in and day out. Systematizing decisions does more than remove emotion. It forces clarity. You cannot write an algorithm from a vague feeling. You must define your criteria with absolute precision. What exact data points will trigger a decision? What are the specific thresholds? Building the system forces you to think deeper, confront ambiguities, and make logic explicit. Trying to build a system exposes flaws in your thinking. It's a powerful tool for refining your understanding of the machine you want to master. This approach isn't just for multi-billion-dollar hedge funds. You can apply it in your life with simple rules and checklists. If you make bad food choices when you're hungry, create a pre-planned weekly menu and a designated grocery shopping day. If you're a writer who procrastinates, write 500 words every morning before checking email. These are personal algorithms. They are simple systems designed to override in-the-moment impulses and ensure you act in alignment with long-term goals. They turn good intentions into consistent results. In most organizations, a mistake is something to be hidden. It is a source of shame, a mark of failure, a threat to your career. At Bridgewater, Ray Dalio built a culture where mistakes are treated as opportunities. They are not just tolerated, they are celebrated. A mistake is a signal. Your understanding of reality was proven wrong. It's a piece of data that shows a principle is flawed or incomplete. To ignore a mistake is to throw away your greatest source of learning, like a scientist ignoring an experiment that disproves their hypothesis. Pain plus reflection equals progress. The pain is the emotional sting of making a mistake, the gut feeling when a trade goes wrong, the gut feeling when a project fails. Most people's instinct is to run from the pain. They blame others, make excuses, try to forget it ever happened. Dalio teaches the opposite. Lean into the pain. Hold it. Examine it. Don't move on until you've found the root cause. The pain is a notification of a valuable lesson. Reflection must be systematic. Diagnose the failure like a doctor. What specific decision led to the bad outcome? What principle was I operating on? Why did that principle fail here? Get to the absolute root cause. Lack of information, flawed assumption, emotional bias. Once diagnosed, update your system. Write a new, improved principle. Turn failure into an asset. Bridgewater kept a mistake log where every error, big or small, was recorded and analyzed. It wasn't about blame. It was about collective learning. Making mistakes transparent lets the whole organization learn from one person's experience. The log became a library of hard-won lessons, each entry refining the decision-making machine. Evolution is messy and painful, trial and error. Embrace mistakes as data and accelerate your evolution. To build a system that learns from reality, Ray Dalio had to declare war on a powerful human instinct, the desire for social comfort. He recognized that in most companies, politeness is a currency. People avoid difficult conversations to protect feelings. They soften feedback to avoid conflict. They stay silent when they disagree with a boss. Dalio argues this culture of terminal niceness is toxic. It creates a fog of half-truths and unspoken disagreements where bad ideas can survive and thrive. To pierce this fog, he instituted two core tenets that would define Bridgewater's culture: radical truth and radical transparency. These principles are not suggestions. They are commands. Radical truth means you must say what you actually think. It is a commitment to being completely honest, even when it's awkward or uncomfortable. This isn't an excuse to be a jerk. It's about prioritizing the mission and the collective search for truth over individual feelings. The logic is simple. If someone is making a mistake, the most helpful thing you can do is tell them directly. Protecting their feelings in the short term by withholding the truth only ensures they will fail in the long term. Dalio believes that meaningful work and meaningful relationships are built on a foundation of truth, not on the fragile ground of insincere pleasantries. Radical transparency is the mechanism that makes radical truth possible. It means that, by default, everything is out in the open. Most meetings at Bridgewater are recorded and made available for anyone in the company to review. Performance reviews and feedback are often public. Decisions and the reasoning behind them are documented and audited. This transparency eliminates the back-channel gossip and political maneuvering that poison most organizations. When you know your words and actions are on the record, you are forced to be more thoughtful and honest. There is nowhere to hide a bad idea or a lazy opinion. This environment is intentionally challenging. It is designed to strip away the emotional shields people use to protect their egos. Dalio's goal was to create an idea meritocracy, a place where the best ideas win, regardless of who they come from. Such a system cannot function if people are afraid to speak up, or if information is hidden in silos. It requires a shared commitment to a painful, but ultimately more effective way of operating. It is a culture where the discomfort of confronting truth is seen as a small price to pay for the immense benefit of continuous learning and improvement. The war on comfort is, in fact, a war for progress. Section 2. The central human conflict: ego versus learning. Ego, learning. According to Ray Dalio, every single one of us is in the grip of a constant internal battle. It is the central conflict that defines our capacity for growth. On one side, you have your ego. The ego's primary desire is to be right. It wants to protect your current self-image. It tells you that your opinions are correct. It tells you your insights are brilliant. It tells you your identity is tied to your ideas. The ego is defensive. The ego is fragile. The ego is deeply resistant to criticism. It sees disagreement as a threat. It sees mistakes as a personal failing. It craves validation. It fears humiliation. creating a powerful barrier to seeing the world as it truly is. On the other side, you have your capacity for learning. The learner's primary desire is not to be right, but to find out what is true. The learner is curious. The learner is open. The learner is humble. It understands that its current knowledge is incomplete and that its views may be wrong. The learner actively seeks out challenges. The learner seeks disagreements, viewing them not as attacks, but as opportunities to discover a blind spot. For the learner, a mistake is not a source of shame, but a valuable piece of data. This part of you understands that progress comes from evolving, and evolution is impossible without first admitting you have something to learn. Dalio frames this as a zero-sum game. The more your ego is in control, the less you are able to learn. He proposes a law. The bigger the ego, the slower the evolution. People who are trapped by their egos become stuck. They repeat the same mistakes over and over, because they cannot or will not accept the feedback reality is giving them. They surround themselves with people who agree with them, creating an echo chamber that reinforces their biases. They prioritize the short-term comfort of feeling right over the long-term benefit of becoming better. Their personal and professional growth grinds to a halt. The key to winning this battle is to consciously separate your identity from your ideas. You are not your opinions. An attack on your idea is not an attack on you. When you truly internalize this, everything changes. You stop defending your position and start stress testing it. You begin to genuinely want to find the smartest people who hold the opposite view. You don't ask them for their opinion to be polite. You ask because you desperately want to see what they see. This shift from, I need to be right, to, I need to find out what's true, is the single most important step in accelerating your own progress. Section 3. Who do you trust? The believability system. In a culture of radical truth, everyone is encouraged to speak their mind. This creates a flood of opinions and disagreements. How do you sort through all these conflicting views? Are all opinions created equal? Ray Dalio's answer, no. In an idea meritocracy, you must let ideas be heard, and also have a system for weighing them. Enter believability weighted decision-making. It gives more weight to opinions of people who are more believable. So what makes someone believable? Not their job title, not their charisma, not how loudly they talk. Dalio, believability. 2 things. 1. Proven success in the specific area, a track record. 2. Ability to explain cause and effect logically, both track record and clear explanation. Just high believability, no experience and a weak argument. Just low believability. This replaces autocracy and democracy. Believability weighting, a meritocratic third way. Example, a veteran macro strategist versus a new intern. Bridgewater encoded this into software. People used an app to rate their own conviction and to assess others' believability in real time. That data produced believability-weighted votes. The key question, who are the most believable people I can talk to? A systematic way to listen to the signal, not the noise. Section 4. Building an idea. Meritocracy. The ultimate goal of radical truth, radical transparency, and believability-weighted decision-making is to create a true idea meritocracy. Radical truth. Radical transparency. Believability-weighted decision-making. This is an environment where the best ideas win out, regardless of where or from whom they originate. It is the opposite of a top-down hierarchy where ideas are judged based on seniority. It is also the opposite of a consensus-driven culture where the safest, least controversial ideas are chosen to avoid conflict. An idea meritocracy is a machine for finding the best possible answer, by fostering thoughtful disagreement and resolving it in a systematic way. Building this kind of culture requires specific habits and protocols. The first is to force disagreements into the open. Dalio believes that unresolved disagreements are a cancer in any organization. He teaches people to get in sync by having frank, open-minded conversations. The goal is not for one person to convince the other, but for both parties to see the issue from the other's perspective. They must be willing to climb into each other's heads and understand the reasoning behind their views. Only after both sides truly understand the other's position can they begin to diagnose the source of their disagreement and move toward a solution. When disagreements persist, an idea meritocracy needs a clear process for resolving them. This is where believability weighting becomes a critical tool. The group must assess who has the most expertise and the best track record on the specific issue at hand. Often, the discussion itself will reveal who is more believable, as some arguments hold up to scrutiny better than others.
We need to decide if a decision must be made.
The most believable person on that topic often serves as the responsible party who makes the final call after hearing all viewpoints. This ensures that decisions are made by those most qualified to make them. This entire system is designed to subordinate the ego to the mission. It requires everyone to accept that their primary goal is not to be right, but to help the team find the right answer. You learn to love being proven wrong by a more believable person, because it means you've learned something and the team is now closer to the truth. An idea meritocracy is difficult to build and even harder to maintain. It requires constant vigilance against the human tendency to seek comfort and avoid conflict. But for Dalio, it is the only way to build a truly intelligent organization that can evolve and thrive over time. Table of Contents. Part 4. Act 3. Pain, Reflection, and Error. Protocol. 1. The most important formula. Pain plus reflection equals progress. 2. Step 1. Embrace the pain, don't run from it. 3. Step 2. Diagnose to the root cause. 4. Step 3. Write it down, change the system. 5. Building your own error protocol. Section 1. The most important formula. Of all Ray Dalio's teachings, none is more fundamental than a simple three-part equation. This is not just a clever phrase. It is the engine of evolution itself, both for individuals and for organizations. Dalio argues that nature and life operates through a process of stress, adaptation, growth. A muscle doesn't grow stronger by resting. It grows stronger when it is pushed to the point of pain and then given time to recover and rebuild. Similarly, our minds, our skills, and our character do not grow when things are easy. They grow when we encounter obstacles, make mistakes, and experience the pain that comes with failure. The formula begins with pain. This is the critical signal that something is wrong. Pain can be the sting of a financial loss, the embarrassment of a public mistake, the frustration of a failed project, or the discomfort of receiving harsh criticism. The natural human instinct is to avoid this feeling. We blame external factors, we make excuses, or we simply try to forget the mistake and move on as quickly as possible. According to Dalio, this is the single biggest mistake you can make. Running from pain is running from an opportunity to learn. The pain is a flashing red light on your dashboard, telling you that your machine is not working as expected. The second part of the equation, reflection, is the active ingredient that transforms pain into something useful. Pain by itself does not lead to progress. If it did, everyone who made mistakes would automatically get better. Reflection is the conscious, deliberate process of diagnosing the pain to find its root cause. It requires you to stop, suppress your emotional reaction, and think logically about what happened. Why did I make that mistake? What was the flawed assumption or belief that led to my decision? What principle was I following, and why did it fail? This is not a quick or easy process. It demands humility, objectivity, and a relentless commitment to finding the truth. When pain is combined with deep reflection, the result is progress. Progress is not just not making the same mistake again. It is a fundamental upgrade to your operating system. It's the creation of a new, more accurate principle that will guide your decisions in the future. You have taken a moment of failure and forged it into a tool for future success. This cycle, encountering a problem, feeling the pain, reflecting on the cause, and adapting, is how all complex systems evolve. By consciously applying this formula to your own life and work, you are taking control of your own evolution. You are turning the inevitable pain of life into your greatest driver of growth. Section 2. Step 1. Embrace the pain, don't run from it. The first and most difficult step in Dalio's error protocol is to change your relationship with pain. You must learn to embrace it. When you make a mistake and feel that sharp sting of failure, your instinctive emotional brain, what Dalio calls your lower-level you, screams at you to run. It wants to protect your ego. Find someone else to blame. Rationalize why it wasn't your fault. Bury the memory so you don't have to feel the shame. This is a survival instinct, but in the modern world, it is a catastrophic barrier to learning. Override the instinct. Move toward the pain. Embracing pain means acknowledging it and accepting ownership. Say, "This hurts, and I am responsible for the decision that led to this outcome." This is not about self-flagellation. This is not about wallowing in guilt. It's about taking a clinical, objective stance. The pain is simply data. It's a biological signal you've collided with reality. Your goal, be curious, not judgmental. Why does this hurt? What specific expectation was violated? What does this feeling tell me about my blind spots or weaknesses? Become a detective. The first clue is the pain. Associate pain with opportunity. Like an athlete who reads muscle soreness as a good workout, train your mind to read mistakes as lessons. This is a profound mental shift. Instead of thinking, "Oh no, I failed," think, "Great, an opportunity to get better." This turns fear into welcome. Failure becomes a starting point for discovery and improvement. Practice mindfulness. Observe emotions without being controlled by them. When pain hits, take a deep breath and activate your higher-level you, the logical, reflective brain. Remind yourself, the discomfort is temporary, the lesson is permanent. Face the pain repeatedly, and you build a habit. You forge neural pathways that link mistakes to growth, not shame. This is the foundational skill for all progress. Section 3, Step 2. Diagnose to the root cause. Once you have embraced the pain and decided to learn from it, the real work begins. The second step of the error protocol is to diagnose the mistake to find its root cause. This is a forensic investigation. It is not enough to identify the surface-level error. For example, "I lost money because I bought the stock at the wrong time." That is a description of what happened, not a diagnosis of why it happened. Why did I buy at the wrong time? Because I thought the company's earnings would be strong. Why did I think that? Because I relied on a single analyst's report. Why did I do that? Because I was in a hurry and didn't do my own research. This process is about peeling back the layers to find the fundamental breakdown. Dalio emphasizes that the root cause is almost always a flawed principle. The root cause isn't just, "I was in a hurry." It's an unwritten, subconscious principle. It's okay to cut corners when short on time. Or, I can trust a single expert without verification. Identifying that flawed principle is the goal of diagnosis. You have to find the faulty line of code in your mental programming. During this diagnosis, it is critical to avoid blaming other people or external circumstances. Blaming others short-circuits learning. Even if someone gave bad info, ask, "Why did I trust it without verifying?" Keep the focus on your decisions and systems. This radical ownership is the only way to ensure you gain agency over future outcomes. You cannot change other people, but you can change your own principles and processes. A proper diagnosis is specific and written down. It should clearly state the mistake, the proximate causes, and the ultimate root cause. For example, the root cause of my failed project was my principle of avoiding conflict, which led me to not challenge a team member's bad idea even though I suspected it was flawed. This level of clarity is essential. It moves the problem from a vague feeling of failure into a concrete, solvable issue. It identifies the specific machine part that broke down. Only when you have this level of diagnostic precision can you move to the final, most important step, fixing the machine. Section 4. Step 3. Write it down, change the system. Diagnosing the root cause of a mistake is a powerful insight, but insight alone is not enough. The third and final step of Dalio's error protocol is to translate that insight into a tangible change. This begins with writing down a new principle. The principle should be a clear, concise rule that, if followed in the future, would prevent you from making the same type of mistake again. It must be a direct solution to the root cause you identified. If the root cause was trusting a single analyst, the new principle might be, for any major investment, I must triangulate my view by consulting at least 3 independent, believable sources. Writing the principle down is a non-negotiable part of the process. It forces you to clarify your thinking and moves the lesson from a fleeting thought into a permanent asset. An unwritten principle is just a vague intention. A written principle is a tool. At Bridgewater, this was taken to an extreme. The firm maintains a massive, shared repository of principles accumulated over decades. Every time a new root cause is found, a new principle is logged. That collection serves as the company's collective brain, a detailed instruction manual for better decisions. Once the principle is written, you must design a system or change your behavior to ensure you follow it. This is about engineering your environment to support your new rule. Simply hoping you'll remember the principle in a moment of stress is a recipe for failure. You need to build a forcing function. This could be a checklist you must complete before a decision. It could be a new step in a team workflow. It could be a calendar reminder to review your principles weekly. The goal is to make it harder to ignore your new rule than to follow it. This step closes the loop and ensures progress is real and lasting. You experienced pain. You reflected to find the root cause. You wrote a new principle to address it. You changed your system to embed that principle into your future behavior. Your machine has been upgraded. This is not a one-time fix. It is a continuous loop. As you operate with your new, improved set of principles, you will encounter new, more sophisticated problems. These will cause new pain, which will trigger a new cycle of reflection and progress. This is the upward spiral of evolution. Section 5. Building your own error protocol. You don't need to run a multi-billion-dollar hedge fund to apply Dalio's error protocol. You can build a personal version to accelerate your own growth in any area of your life, from your career to your relationships. The first step is to create a mistake log. This can be a physical notebook, a simple text document, or a spreadsheet. The medium doesn't matter, but the habit does. The purpose of this log is to be the central repository for your learning. Whenever you experience a painful mistake, a moment where the outcome was significantly worse than you expected, you must commit to logging it. This act alone forces you to start seeing mistakes as opportunities. For each entry in your log, you should follow the 3-step process. First, describe the pain. Write down what happened and how it made you feel. Be honest. I felt humiliated when my presentation was criticized, or I feel intense regret for losing that money. Acknowledging the emotion is the first step to moving past it and into logical analysis. Second, perform the root cause diagnosis. Ask why repeatedly until you can't anymore. Push past the surface-level excuses and identify the flawed principle or belief that guided your actions. Write this diagnosis down with as much clarity as possible. The final and most crucial column in your log is for the new principle and the system change. Date. The pain. What happened? Diagnosis. Root cause. New principle, system change. Based on your diagnosis, write a clear, actionable rule for yourself. For example, if the root cause was your failure to prepare for a meeting, your new principle might be, for any meeting I lead, I will write and distribute an agenda with clear goals at least 24 hours in advance. Then, design the system change. It could be creating a meeting template that includes an agenda section, or setting up a recurring calendar block the day before meetings for preparation. This makes your new principle a tangible part of your workflow. Over time, this mistake log will become your personal playbook for success. It will be a collection of hard-won wisdom that is uniquely tailored to your own weaknesses and blind spots. Periodically, perhaps once a month, you should review your log. Reading through your past mistakes and the principles you derived from them reinforces the lessons and helps you see larger patterns in your behavior. Capturing pain, diagnosing its cause, engineering a better system. It is how you stop being a victim of your mistakes and start becoming their beneficiary. Beyond his principles for life and management, Ray Dalio is most famous for demystifying the economy. He argues that while it looks impossibly complex, the economy is just a simple machine driven by human nature and a series of logical, repeatable transactions. To understand its movements, you don't need a PhD in economics. You just need to see how three main forces interact. The first and most important force is productivity growth. Over the long run, an economy's wealth is determined by its ability to learn, innovate, and become more productive. This is the slow, steady upward climb that lifts living standards over generations. It's the straight line on the graph of human progress. The second force, layered on top of the productivity trend, is the short-term debt cycle. This cycle typically lasts about 5 to 10 years and is what we call the business cycle. It's driven by the expansion and contraction of credit, which is controlled by central banks. When credit is cheap and easy to get, people and businesses borrow and spend more. This fuels an economic boom. Asset prices rise, and everyone feels rich. But this can't last forever. Eventually, spending outpaces production, causing inflation. The central bank then raises interest rates to cool things down, making credit more expensive. Debt burdens become heavier, spending slows, and a recession follows. The third and most powerful force is the long-term debt cycle. This cycle unfolds over decades, typically 50 to 100 years, and it governs the rise and fall of entire economic eras. It happens when, over many short-term cycles, debt grows consistently faster than income. For decades, this process feels good. Rising debt fuels asset bubbles and prosperity. But eventually, a critical point is reached where the debt burdens cannot be paid back. At this stage, central banks have already lowered interest rates to zero during a downturn, and their primary tool for stimulating the economy is gone. They have lost control. This is the end of the long-term debt cycle, a moment Dalio calls a deleveraging. It is a period of great economic and social turmoil. The system must be reset. This is not a normal recession. It's a structural crisis involving painful austerity, massive debt defaults, money printing on an unprecedented scale, and significant wealth redistribution. Dalio's study of history shows these moments are not black swans, but are a regular and predictable part of the economic machine. Understanding these three forces, productivity, the short cycle, and the long cycle, is the key to seeing where we are going, and what is likely to come next. Given his deep understanding of economic cycles, how does Ray Dalio approach investing? His core philosophy can be summarized in a single powerful idea. Diversification is the holy grail. However, his definition of diversification is far more sophisticated than what most people think. It's not just about owning a lot of different stocks. True diversification, Dalio argues, is about owning a collection of assets that will perform differently across all possible economic environments. The goal is not to predict the future perfectly, but to build a portfolio that is so balanced that it can withstand whatever the future brings, whether it's high inflation, a deflationary depression, or rapid growth. This led him to develop the all-weather portfolio strategy, built on the concept of risk parity. Traditional portfolios are dominated by stock market risk. A typical 60-40 stock and bond portfolio might look balanced, but in reality, the stocks contribute the vast majority of the portfolio's volatility and risk. Risk parity, on the other hand, aims to balance the risk contributions of each asset class. This means you don't allocate capital based on dollar amounts, but based on risk. Since bonds are typically less volatile than stocks, a risk parity approach would require you to own a much larger position in bonds, often using leverage, to balance out the risk coming from your stock allocation. The cornerstone of this strategy is finding assets that are genuinely uncorrelated. This is the key. Most investors chase high returns, but Dalio says they should be obsessed with correlation. Two assets are uncorrelated if they react differently to the same economic event. For example, when economic growth is strong, stocks tend to do well. But in a crisis where people fear currency debasement, gold often shines. By combining assets that have low correlation to each other, you can dramatically reduce the overall volatility of your portfolio without sacrificing expected returns. Dalio famously said that finding 15 to 20 good uncorrelated return streams is the holy grail of investing. This approach fundamentally changes the goal of investing. It shifts the focus from trying to be a hero who picks the next big winner, to being a strategist who builds a resilient machine. The all-weather portfolio is not designed to shoot the lights out in any single year. It is designed to perform reasonably well and protect capital across 4 economic seasons: rising growth, falling growth, rising inflation, and falling inflation. It is a humble approach, acknowledging that the future is radically uncertain. It replaces the hubris of prediction with the wisdom of preparation, ensuring that you can survive and even thrive no matter what the economic machine throws at you. From his macro framework and portfolio philosophy, a set of clear, timeless investing rules emerges. The first and perhaps most counterintuitive rule is to not be fooled by bull markets. Dalio constantly reminds investors, don't confuse brains with a bull market. When asset prices are going up, it's easy to feel like a genius. Every decision seems to work out. But in reality, you may just be riding a wave of expanding credit and rising sentiment. This is a dangerous illusion that leads to overconfidence and excessive risk-taking. True skill is measured not by how you perform in good times, but by how you protect capital during the inevitable downturns. A second crucial rule, especially relevant today, is that cash is trash during certain phases of the long-term debt cycle. Specifically, when a government is deep in debt and is resorting to printing massive amounts of money, holding cash is a losing proposition. The value of that cash is being actively debased by the central bank. While it feels safe because its nominal value is stable, its purchasing power is silently eroding. In such an environment, you are being paid to borrow money and punished for saving it. This leads to the logical conclusion that one must own real assets, stocks, real estate, commodities, that can hold their value in the face of currency depreciation. This brings us to a third, related rule: gold serves a unique and vital purpose. Dalio doesn't see gold as an investment to make you rich. He sees it as a form of anti-currency, a hedge against the failure of the monetary system. Throughout history, whenever governments have printed too much money and trust in their currency has collapsed, gold has been the one asset that has universally maintained its value. It is the ultimate form of wealth insurance. Owning a small allocation of gold is not a bet on it going up. It is a defensive position against the risk of the financial system itself becoming unstable, a risk that grows larger at the end of a long-term debt cycle. Finally, Dalio's ultimate rule is to know what you don't know and to structure your portfolio accordingly. The future is uncertain. No one can predict with perfect accuracy whether the next decade will bring inflation, deflation, or stagflation. The only logical response to this radical uncertainty is to build a portfolio that is balanced against all of these possibilities. This means owning assets that do well in growth, assets that do well in recession, and assets that do well in inflation. By humbly accepting your inability to predict the future, you can build a portfolio that doesn't need to. You are prepared for any weather. We have journeyed through the intricate, systematic world of Ray Dalio. It is a world built on a single, uncompromising foundation. Reality works like a machine, and you can either understand its gears or be crushed by them. From the discipline of radical truth to the humility of his pain plus reflection formula, Dalio's teachings are not a collection of tips, but a complete operating system for navigating life. He offers a playbook for stripping away the two greatest enemies of human progress: ego and emotion. By observing reality objectively, identifying its cause and effect rules, and building principles-based systems, he argues that we can move from being passive victims of circumstance to active architects of our outcomes. This is the core of the Dalio Playbook. The journey begins with a conscious war against your own instincts. It demands you seek out disagreement rather than comfort, and prioritize finding out what is true over the fleeting satisfaction of being right. This is the central conflict between learning and ego. The path of learning requires you to embrace the painful feedback from your mistakes, diagnosing them to their root cause, and writing down new principles to upgrade your decision-making machine. As we've seen, this process is not abstract. It is a concrete protocol. You must build your own error log, practice believability weighting when seeking advice, and consciously design systems to overcome your own flawed, in-the-moment impulses. Progress is not a matter of motivation, but of engineering. Dalio's framework matters more now than ever because the machine is showing signs of stress. We are living at the tail end of a long-term debt cycle, a period marked by extreme debt levels, near zero interest rates, and the kind of political polarization and wealth inequality that has historically preceded great shifts in power. The principles of the economic machine are not theoretical. They are playing out in real time. Dalio's work provides a map for this volatile territory, helping you understand the larger forces at play, so you can position yourself to weather the storm and even find opportunity within it, rather than being surprised and broken by the inevitable reset. So, how do you begin? Start with 3 simple actions. First, start a mistake log today. The next time you feel the pain of a failure, however small, write it down and diagnose its root cause. Second, for your next important decision, actively find the most believable person you know who disagrees with you, and try to understand their perspective. Third, take one recurring problem in your life and design a simple, written-down principle to deal with it. These are not just intellectual exercises. They are the first steps in rewiring your brain. They are the first turns of the flywheel. The choice Dalio presents is stark. Understand reality, systemize truth, and evolve. Or be left behind by the relentless march of the machine.